The Archdiocese believes in God, but with pre-registrations, they want to see a signature. So all those who were pre-registered before you leave, it's important that you sign your name that you were here. Okay, that's very important. We don't want Brenner to just estimate the size of the crowds. I hear he's a poor estimator. Facilitator, he's number one. Estimator, he's not so good. Okay, and I want to thank Father Steve for opening up the doors of Archbishop Shaw High School, for setting up the hall so beautifully with chairs in the front and tables in the back. Not only is it important that you register, but also those that have not registered online, there's a sign-up sheet. You can sign up for there so you're part of the process as it goes along. Okay, and then there's other brochures of St. John Bosco, which the Vibrancy Committee put together. The Vibrancy Committee of St. John Bosco and St. Rosalie, they tell of everything that's happening at both of our parishes. You can see that we're very vibrant. And there's also a pastoral planning survey. Okay, there should be at least one from each family here. Okay, and try to complete it before you leave today. And now, without further ado, I hand you over to Brenner, who's going to lead us in our presentation this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Father, and thank you all for offering up your Sunday afternoon to come out to this. It's what a wonderful crowd, what a wonderful turnout, so thank you for coming out. Before we go into our opening prayer and an overview of our agenda, I thought I would just introduce myself. So, as Father mentioned, my name is Brenner Lecomte. I grew up just down the bayou in Houma. That's where I was born and raised. I'm one of 12, 11 boys and 1 girl. So big family. About half of them are still down there. The rest of us are spread out. I went to school, high school up in New Hampshire, and then studied overseas, and then wound up in Connecticut, just outside of New York City, where I met my wife. So we live there with our 4 kids, but we come back down. In fact, I just took my kids to their first pre-Mardi Gras, family friendly. 3 weeks ago, we were down here. So we love coming down and visiting my family. And I feel so honored to be collaborating with the Archdiocese of New Orleans and with all of you in this process. So I just thank you for accepting me and for allowing me to spend some time with you today. Before we jump in, if you'll just join me in praying this prayer. So I'll share a little bit about our organization, which is the Catholic Leadership Institute, but we believe in informing and supporting leaders for our church. And all of you are leaders. Maybe some of you say, you know what, I don't have any official position in the church or in the parish, but you're all called to be leaders, and by just showing up here today, you're being a leader, right? You're taking action, you're contributing. So we want to pray for more of you. We want to pray for you, that you'll continue, that you'll be strong in your faith. We want to pray for more of you, that there'll be more leaders that step up in our church. So if you'll join me as we pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Lord, we pray that you will create among us Catholic leaders, individuals made in your image, who will apply your teachings in their lives to positively impact our families, our workplaces, our communities, and our church. Help us to inspire those with whom we come in contact to share their God-given talents, to do your will, to find a place in your kingdom where their deepest joys and the world's deepest hungers meet and cry for their special qualities and abilities. Make us leaders, Lord, leaders with strength and courage to follow you, leaders who make your love visible to the world in all of our words and actions. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for praying. So today's agenda, just to recap what we're going to be going over today. So after our prayer and welcome, we're going to review the pastoral planning process, its recaps, and its goals. We're then going to review some information about our parish. And it's so wonderful to have our combined parish communities here. So we're going to we're going to look at them each individually, just to talk a little bit about the sacramental trends as well as the financial health of our parishes. And then we'll have some time for questions, feedback, and reactions. Obviously we would love to hear from everyone. I'm sure everyone has things that they would like to share, and we would love to hear from all of you. We might not be able to get to all of you this evening, but know that you can reach out to Father and to those who are on the Pastoral Council, the Finance Council, with suggestions and recommendations, and all of those will be taken into account. And then we'll talk a little bit about next steps, and we'll do our closing prayer. So, first off, I want to start with understanding why we're doing pastoral planning. And I love to share first just a stat that nationally, the average age of the person who goes to Mass in the U.S. is 65 years old. So just nationally, when you take a look, it's 65. And I like to share a personal story about my own parish. So my own parish up in Connecticut, my wife and I have been involved there as youth ministers and teaching religious education for the past 10 years. And at one point, 10 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago, we had over 1,000 kids in our religious education program, right? Over 1,000 kids. Just a suburban town. We have a Catholic school connected to it, but 1,000 kids connected. And many of the parents would drop off their kids at religious education, and they would never come in, to chat. And many of them wouldn't go to Mass. We'd be teaching the kids religious education, preparing them for reconciliation and for communion. And we'd ask them, did you go to Mass on Sunday? No, I didn't go to Mass on Sunday, would be their response. My parents don't go. They didn't take me. And we were always just amazed that people who didn't seem to be connected to the church, they maybe considered themselves Catholic, but they didn't go to Mass, they didn't participate in the life of the parish, would drop their kids off. They'd be very, very dedicated. Maybe it was free babysitting, I'm not sure. But they would drop their kids off, and we always wondered, how long will they continue to do this? How long will they continue to do this? Well, this year, our religious education is around 400, right? So it went from 1,000 just a few years ago to 400. And it's not because the kids are no longer living in the town, right? I think we've finally at least my experience in our town, is we've reached that tipping point of, our guess was they were always just bringing the kids because they wanted them to get married in the church. And if you go to get married in the church and you don't have your sacraments, right, they didn't want that. Well, guess what? People aren't getting married in the church anymore. If they're getting married at all, it's on the beach or it's at the golf course or that's what's happening. So you don't need it anymore. So there's not kind of that forced, again, it's just a guess, but I say this to just mention that as Catholics, we've always kind of assumed, because we were all raised that way, I for sure, and I'm sure many of you, that you went to Mass on Sunday. It was expected of you. You went. You signed up your kids for religious education. You got them all the sacraments. You kind of let them do what they want after they finish their sacramental prep, but they were expected to go to religious education, right? And that is changing. That's changing. Right? A big reason, and we'll talk a little bit about CLI, but we're working in dioceses and archdioceses across the U.S., and these trends that we're going to talk about that we see at our own parish are happening nationally. And I would say, if anything, the Archdiocese of New Orleans is doing much better than what we're seeing nationally, right? Doing much better. The cultural Catholic faith that we have here down in South Louisiana is holding out a lot stronger than we're seeing in other places, right? But we're not immune to these trends. We're not immune to these trends. And it's an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity for us to move from this idea of Christendom, that it's just accepted. People come to Mass on Sunday. People register for religious education. People come to parish events. Now to mission, right? That we need to go out and we need to invite people. We need to invite them back to church. We need to invite them to sign up their kids for religious education, right? And it kind of hit my wife and I share my own example, my wife and I, we look around at our friends, many of them, our close friends, don't go to church. Some of them are fallen away Catholics. Some of them are not religious at all. And we just got to the point where we just started inviting them. And it's a bit of a shock. It was a shock for us to do it, right? Because as Catholics, we're not used to doing that, right? Just, hey, why don't you come to Mass with me on Sunday, right? Bring the kids. We're going to have coffee and donuts after. after. We're going to play on the playground. Why don't you come? Right? The first reaction is, oh, I'm not Catholic. That shouldn't matter, right? Come. Maybe you can't receive communion, but you can come and experience it. You can come and hang out after. But it's a new reality for us. We're not used to doing that. But we have to start thinking about doing that if we want to have our parish communities here in the next 10 and 15 years, right? Because as I go back to that first point, with the average age of 65, eventually you look at that curve and it dies off, and what are we going to have left, right, when all of those who are attending now have passed on? Right? So that's the type of planning that we need to think about, right? How do we begin to think about a church on mission, that we're inviting people? And if anything, it's been the perfect storm, right? Here in the Archdiocese in 2016, Archbishop Aymon had a synod, and he already foresaw a lot of these things taking place, right? And he really encouraged us that we need to build these vibrant communities where people can experience the joy of Christ. And that was really the call from this, from the synod, right? And that was really the mission. A lot has happened in between there, right? We had COVID, right, which was a huge thing. And we'll talk a bit about trends and how COVID has really accelerated a lot of the trends that we were already experiencing. I like to say that the largest religious affiliation now are the nuns. And not like our wonderful nuns over here in habits, but the nuns as in nun, religion. When asked, what religion do you identify with, right? It's the largest demographic now. So when we look at these trends, we have to accept the reality that people, especially the younger generation, right? So when you look past the baby boomers, when you look at the millennial generation, when you look at Gen Z, Gen Y, Alpha, that they're just not affiliating with religion. Really any religion. It's not just the Catholic religion. It's really any organized religion. They say they're spiritual, they believe in a higher power, but they don't go to church and they don't worship, and there's not really a religious experience there, right? So we have to accept that reality, but we also have to deal with the other things that are taking place, right? COVID was the perfect excuse, right? As soon as my kids heard that we could watch Mass on the couch, they were all in, right? I'm going to watch Mass on the couch. What could be better than that? So it really kind of lulled a lot of people into complacency, and a lot of those haven't come back, right? A lot of those haven't come back. So that is really low-hanging fruit, right? These aren't even people that we have to convince, right, that have been falling away for years. These are people that are just fallen away since COVID, right? So again, making sure that they feel safe, but bringing them back, right? Bringing them back to church. Obviously, the storms have not helped us in South Louisiana, right? That was really disruptive for our lives down here, for the buildings, for worship. It was very taxing on all of our priests. I've heard some beautiful stories of what the priests had to go through, right, just to minister to their parishes down here, and we thank them. It's really a life of sacrifice that they dedicated to stay in, but it was a reality that we had to struggle with. And then just the population shifts that are taking place in our communities because of that, right? So this pastoral planning is an opportunity. We've been invited by the Archdiocese to do this planning. And all parishes in the Archdiocese have been invited to take up this revitalization process. So 16 parishes in the Archdiocese were identified as needing to substantially improve one point or another, right? So maybe it was participation, maybe it was their finances, maybe it was struggles that they had with their buildings, or loans due to school closures, or the increase in premiums due to the rising cost of insurance, right? That you all experience in your own homes, right? The church is not immune to that. So, looking at those 16 parishes, we're identified to say, okay, we really need to take a hard look at this and say, how do we ensure that there's vibrancy and there's a way for us to be sustainable, not just in the next few years, but in the next 10 or 15 years. Again, taking into account all the trends that we have, right? All of these trends of secularization. How do we make sure that when we go out and we begin to be those missionary disciples, we begin to bring people back to church, that we're inviting them back into something that is an encounter of joy of Jesus Christ, right? A vibrant community that's really a way of showing the face of Christ to those who we're inviting back. So that's really why we're embarking on this pastoral planning, and the whole Archdiocese is embarking on this. Who is the Catholic Leadership Institute? So someone called me the other day and said, we're really upset with that archdiocesan official who came and presented that presentation. So I want to make it clear, I do not work for the archdiocese, right? So we are CLI, the Catholic Leadership Institute. We are a nonprofit based out of Melbourne, Pennsylvania, and we help parishes and dioceses throughout the U.S. in pastoral planning, pastoral revitalization, on the parish level, on the diocesan level, and we're really here to facilitate a conversation. So we're not here to tell the parishes what to do, right? We're really here to help you, right? To facilitate a conversation so that you can make a proposal about how to move forward, right? In this new reality, right? The new reality we're facing. We all want the same thing. We want to be able to have our parish. We want to have our parish community. We want to have a vibrant parish community. We want to have one that's not solely focused on finances or being stressed all the time. We want our priests to not have to be stressed out with facility issues and finances. We all want the same thing. So how do we get there with all of the challenges that we have? So we're here to facilitate that conversation, to bring our expertise from working with parishes and dioceses throughout the U.S. so we can give examples, we can give best practices, we can talk about that, provide that perspective, and then just help to seek clarity. So what are the things that we need clarity on from the archdiocese? What does the archdiocese need clarity on from the parish? So that's really what we're here for. What is the outcome of this process? So we really have one outcome at the end of this process, and that's to provide a proposal to the archdiocese about, how do we make sure that our parishes are not only sustainable, right? Financially sustainable, their facilities are sustainable, but also vibrant communities. Because the archbishop and the archdiocese really wants to make sure that as we embark on this missionary impulse, that we're able to bring people back into communities of vibrancy. So we'll talk a little bit about a timeline and what that could entail. I tell Father all the time, and I use all of you as an example because you've already started this collaboration between St. Rosalie and St. John Bosco, and it's beautiful, right? It's really something to be commended. It's something that I share with other parishes, and it's beautiful to see you come together. And I think you would all experience that through that coming together, you're a stronger community, right? There are things that you can do together that make you stronger. Sure, there are things that maybe we would like to have as our own, right? There are things that can be difficult when we come together, but we really have to be able to look past that and see the beauty and the joy of when we come together. It makes us stronger. So when we're thinking about, did we lose the mic? There it is. And sorry if I'm shouting there. The idea of models going forward, I think this idea of bringing parish communities together, working together, looking at where our strengths, where our weaknesses, and how can the two parish communities work together to be a stronger, united parish. Now, just because parish communities are collaborating or working together doesn't necessarily mean that a church building would close, right? There are other examples. I'm not sure here in the Archdiocese, but definitely in other dioceses that we're working with, where you could potentially have one canonical parish, but two separate worship buildings, right? So even if, and I'm not saying that this would be a proposal that you want to put forward, but if you were to propose, hey, St. Rosalie and St. Don Bosco, if we were united as one canonical parish, it doesn't necessarily mean that you would lose your campus, right, or your building. You could still have two separate worship sites in one canonical parish. So just keep that in mind, that that's a potential idea. There are also ways to explore leadership structures, right? Could the deacons take more of an active role, maybe in the management of some of the aspects of the parish, right? Or do we empower more lay leaders, right, to take some of the responsibility of overseeing the facilities, right, or helping with the finances, etc. And many of these things you might already have in place. I'm just proposing that these are ideas of ways that you can work together to be a stronger parish, and that kind of old adage of, right, we're stronger together than we are separate, right, sharing kind of resources. And a lot of these things you're already implementing, and that's why I say, I think you're miles ahead of where a lot of other parish communities are, and I've used you multiple times as an example of what parishes could do to be stronger. Some of the requirements and constraints, again, we kind of mentioned the difference between a parish and a church building. Each situation is unique, right? It's important that there's a focus on the stewardship of the resources, right? Because, people we give as parishioners to our parish or to certain buildings or to certain funds, and that needs to be respected and will be respected going forward. Any proposal that we make to the archdiocese is really a consultation, right? The archbishop is going to receive that as a consultation. He also needs to consult with the body of priests, the presbyterate, as well as several other, the sustainability committee, as well as several other consultative bodies. And that any kind of, decision, even if he made a decision in the fall, we'll talk a little bit about timelines, that the decision and the implementation could be at separate times, right? So just because a decision's made, it could still take time for implementation to take place. In any plan that's proposed to the archdiocese, there are a few requirements that we have. One of them is that there's a realistic plan to increase participation, right? I think that's important. And again, it goes back to, there are some parishes that are in our cohort that are doing really well financially, but are struggling when it comes to mass attendance or attendance to the sacramental prep or some of the other activities at the church. So when we look at our plan, it's going to be important that we address that, any participation issues. But again, the participation here is excellent. All of the activities that you have in the back and just the whole setup and the feeling that I have being here with all of you shows that you're really driving towards that, right? You want to increase that participation. You want to make space and time for your parish. The second thing is addressing any facilities issues, no? And I know we've had our struggles with the storms and with the buildings, so a plan is going to need to say, okay, what do we want to do with these buildings, right? Do we repair them? Do we rent them out? Do we sell them? And that's something that the parish needs to come together, to agree on, and to make that proposal. The third point is just creating a balanced budget, so to make sure, right, that, again, while rental income and fundraisers are great resources for parishes, it's really important that a parish can live off of a balanced budget from the collections that they take in on a weekly basis and then their expenses, right? Because as you know, anything can happen to rental property and can wipe out that income, and then it can put a parish in a precarious financial situation. Long-term sustainability, right? So we really want to look past, just the next few years. Some parishes say, we have this money coming in or that money coming in and we can make it the next 1 or 2 years. And that's not really what we're looking at, right? I mean, that's important, but we really need to say, okay, what does our parish community look like 10 years out, 15 years out? We want to make sure that we're leaving, right, stronger parishes for our kids and for our grandkids for the future. So that's how, we really want to think about long-term planning. And then finally, addressing any outstanding loans that our parish might have. And I know the loans can come from many different things. A lot of us have struggled with the school closures. But it is a reality that we need to face, and we need to talk about how we want to address those loans. The timeline. So in January, at the beginning of this year, we met with the pastors and the key parish leaders of all of the parishes in our cohort, just to talk about, right, this timeline and this plan. We then met with your key parish leaders of both St. Rosalie and St. John Bosco and Father back in February, I believe is when we met. We then have this meeting, which is that if you see right before Holy Week and Easter, just the parish session 1. And really this is just an opportunity for us to talk about the diocesan pastoral planning, to talk about the specific information of our parish, and then to answer any questions that you have, right? So, I can't stress enough, and I should have stressed it in the beginning, that no decision about any changes to the parishes in the archdiocese have been made by the archbishop, right? No decisions have been made. This is an opportunity for us to take a step back, to look at our parishes, to talk about what we think would be best for our parishes, for their vitality and their sustainability, and to make that recommendation to the archbishop, right? And then he'll take that and in the fall, over some discernment and consultation, he'll make a decision about any changes that need to be made for the whole archdiocese at that point. But no decisions have been made. We'll take a break for Holy Week and Easter, and then we'll come back and we'll meet again with your key parish leaders and father, and we'll talk about what plan, right, do we want to put forward to the Archdiocese. So after we have a draft of that plan, we'll then come back and meet again with all of you to show you what that draft looks like, right? What that information looks like, what we would like to propose as a parish, as a combined parish to the the two parishes to the Archdiocese. And then once there's an agreement on that, we'll listen to feedback, make any changes with the key parish leaders. And then ultimately by August 30th, so the end of August, we need to turn in to the Parish Sustainability Committee what our proposal is, right? So what we would like to do in terms of vibrancy, in terms of finances, in terms of facilities, etc. So we'll turn that in, and then the Archbishop will have some time to review it and to consult in the fall, and then at some point after that make his decisions. So that's the timeline of this process. We're now going to go into a little bit information about our local parish. So we'll look at some census data, and then we'll also look at our sacramental trends. So basically the census data, right, you have canonical parish, right, which is an outline, right, when any parish is erected, a territory is assigned to that parish, right? And the same is true if a parish is closed. That territory has to be assigned to another parish, right? So there's a canonical boundary. So basically what we did is, or the Archdiocese with a consultant was able to pull the Census Bureau information from the canonical area, right? So this is where this information is coming from. Before I present this, I want to caveat that census data is excellent, right? It's really good information, but it's just one input when thinking about our parishes moving forward. There can be a lot of information that's not captured in census data, right? Maybe new companies that are moving in, new apartment buildings that are going up, new developments that are taking place, and that's great, but it only impacts our parish if those people come to church, right? If they're Catholic and if they come to Mass and they participate in the life of the parish. Because, I've been dealing with a lot of parishes that are saying the census data is all wrong and we're a booming community. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but it's not showing up in your Mass attendance numbers, right? Or it's not showing up in your activities at your church. So we just want to, census data is great, right? It kind of tells us, is there any kind of big shift in the area around us that maybe is impacting our numbers? And we can take that into account. But I can tell you by looking at all the census data of all the parishes we're working with, the general secularization, right, and disaffiliation with religion is having a much bigger impact than any changes in demographics around us, okay? So we'll take that with, a little bit of a grain of salt. This is the same information, but for St. Rosalie, right? So you can see the demographic. And don't ask me, it kind of looks like gerrymandering, right, with the politicians. I don't know how they write these, but that is the St. Rosalie territory there. So let's talk a little bit about the planning area, right? So some of the trends, let me see, this is, yep. So first off, we just looked at the combined population for the two parishes, and then we'll look at some specific trends in the sacramental data. But when we look at the combined information, 2010 combined population for the study area is approximately 14,000 people. The combined population has remained relatively the same from 2010 to 2022. It's projected to decrease slightly between 22 and 27, but like I say, it's marginal. It's within, 100 people. And again, they're trying to project out 5 years. The median age is higher to the same than that of the median age in Jefferson Parish. And the median household income in 2022 is the same or slightly higher than the median household income in Jefferson Parish. Some of the sacramental trends. So we'll look at St. John Bosco first. So Mass attendance as measured by the October Mass count. So keep in mind, this is something that happens nationally in October. They count those who are attending Mass in October. And some people ask, why October? Why not count Christmas or Easter when it's popping? It's like, well, that's not a good test, right, of how many people actually come to Mass. We know that the churches are overflowing for Christmas and Easter. So October tends to be a good, right? It's not in the summer when people are away. You don't have any holiday in there. So again, this has been taking place for years, and it's a national it's a good test. So for Don Bosco, Mass attendance has declined by about 50% from 785 in 2018 to 341 in 2021. Now, everyone always raises their hand, and so I'm just going to acknowledge it. These are COVID years, right? So it's expected that there were obviously some lower numbers. But what we're seeing nationally is, and we'll look at a trend in just a second, but nationally there's a trend, again, this secularization, this disaffiliation that's not going to church, has started, from many years back, right? And it's been slowly kind of increasing. And COVID just kind of quickened that trend, right? And after COVID, people are definitely coming back. So we're seeing, again, nationally, numbers come back, but they're really just coming back to that downward sloping trend, right? So we're still dealing with communities that are smaller. And again, if the average age of the person going to church is 65, that makes sense, right? Because as that demographic is slowly dying off, and again, that the baby boomers and older, they're the largest number of our mass goers. They were also the hardest hit by COVID, right? The amount of people that passed away due to COVID. So all of those have definitely affected these numbers. But what we have to say at this point is that it's not really, right, these are the numbers that we're dealing with, right? And how are we going to go about inviting people back, but then also working on those younger demographics? So that's the mass attendance numbers. Baptisms have declined from 16 in 2018 to 2 in 21. First communions declined from 10 in 2018 to 0. Now, I also want to take a moment to say that the parishes also, when there's some 0 numbers, they might be at the neighboring parish, right? Because there is a rotation that takes place between St. Don Bosco and St. Rosalie. So I'm giving you all these numbers, but sometimes they're filled in they'll be filled in on the next slide. Confirmations down from 32 in 2018 to 25 in 2021. And then religious education enrollment down from 36 at Don Bosco in 2018 to 0 in 21. Some of these numbers, the other thing, we're using 21 numbers, 22 numbers. We are seeing upticks, right? Across the board and everything. But again, the upticks are still kind of coming back down to that downward sloping trend line. Here are the trends for St. Rosalie. So again, mass count down from 500 in 2018 to just under 300 in 21. Baptisms down from 21 in 2018 to 5 in 21. First communions down from 39 in 2018 to 0 in 21. Confirmations down. Again, there's that rotation of numbers. And then religious education is actually up from 10 in 2018 to 16 in 21. Okay? Just to kind of see on the graph, right? As you can see, you definitely have kind of that downward slope. You have COVID, and then you're starting to see that uptick, and I would think that even the 22 numbers will show that uptick. But this chart is very, this is basically, if you looked at a chart of mass attendance in the U.S., it would look very similar to this, right? So even if you mapped it back further, right, this trend has been a steady trend that we're seeing across the church. And really our challenge, right, or our opportunity is to say, what can we do to arrest this trend, right? What do we need to do? And again, the answer, when you look at all the data, is really that younger demographic, right? It's that younger demographic that, is not going to church. And I think we all know people that fit that mold, right? That maybe were raised in the church and just either haven't come back or they haven't gone to Mass at all. So that's the Don Bosco. Just the sacramental trends, right? You can see baptisms, first communions, and confirmations. Again, those are zeros, but they'll be picked up on the other slide, a few of them. The St. Rosalie Mass trends, you can see from 500, the dip during COVID, and then the comeback. Sacramental trends, you see the baptisms, first communions, and confirmations. And then we'll look at the financial health. So St. John Bosco, right, cash position, very healthy cash position, just at around $1 million with no loans or payable balances. Still the cash flow, right, there's a projected deficit in the weekly cash flow. So there's still, right, healthy cushion to be able to withstand that, but that's something that we want to address, right? How do we make sure that we're cash flow positive on a weekly or monthly basis? St. Rosalie, a little bit more of a difficult financial situation with a little over 100,000. Again, these are all June 30th numbers, right? We're just trying to compare apples to apples, and some of these might have shifted. But it gives you an idea, right, that there is a cash position, but there's also a loan balance due in large part to the school, right, the closure of the school. And then also a payable balance to the Archdiocese. Many of that was deferrals of the money. So the premiums for the insurance that gets paid by the Archdiocese. There was a deferral, especially during COVID, right, when people weren't going to Mass, we weren't able to pay those, but that is a balance owed, and that we need to, address that, right, and we need to figure out how we want to address that moving forward. Also kind of a negative cash flow on a weekly or monthly basis based on the collection. The next thing, and I know you have many ministries, we just wanted to highlight a few of the key ministries. So again, there's so much going on at the combined parishes of St. John Bosco and St. Rosalie. We're not able to highlight all of them, but what we really wanted to address with this slide is if our community wasn't here, what would be impacted? And I think there are more things that would be impacted than just what's here, but a few of the beautiful things that we have are our Adoration Chapel, our Youth Mass at St. John Bosco, and our Come Lord Jesus groups, right? And then at St. Rosalie, the youth ministry and the food pantry that so many needy people depend on. So we just wanted to highlight a few, although we know that these aren't all of the ministries. There are so many good activities that are taking place between both parishes. Addressing facilities, so at St. John Bosco, church building in good shape, parish office, maintenance shop, other facilities are leased out to the Academy Charter School. At St. Rosalie, a little bit more of a difficult situation in terms of the buildings with a lot of repairs needed due to the storm, right? So that's just something we have to address. With that, that's the end of the presentation. So, we're happy to take any questions. I don't know if people want to, and if we have another mic. If we don't have another mic, we can, if you can speak loud enough, I'll just make sure to reiterate the question or the comment or the feedback as you have it. Looks like Father has a mic over there. So, any questions about anything that we presented, about the diocesan planning process, or any of the information about our parishes? Yes, sir. Just so that we can make sure to hear from everyone, maybe if we can just keep them as short as possible, but we can spend as much time after as we can.
My point being is a lot of what I put together addresses a lot of what we have talked about, and we are in agreement. I wish I could stand up there and give a presentation like you.
So what I would say, especially, I definitely want to hear proposals. I think proposals are good, but that is going to be the next phase. That is going to be the next step, is the proposals. So what I want to make sure, if you're okay with it, and what's your name? Richard. Richard, if you're okay with it, let's try to answer any clarifying questions about the process.
I agree with that.
And then because we'll have plenty of time to take in proposals, but let's try to answer any questions that we might have about the process or the data. Just Bishop, thank you. Thank you. Was there one in the back?
Wayne Alabon, I'm from St. John Bosco. I have a question about your data. You compare data with...
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Sure.
Because when you had schools open at St. Rosalie and St. John Bosco, okay, kids were making their first communion.
Yeah.
Okay? They were making their baptism, well, not necessarily baptism, that's and they were making their confirmation.
Yeah.
Because they were tied to the school.
Yep.
Now that the schools have been closed, St. John Bosco, okay? That data is off. Okay, because parents elected to send their kids, whether it be visitation or another parish, they are going to have their kids
Right. Through the sacraments there.
in the sacrament.
So I think that's an excellent point. So what I would say is that's the reality now, though, right? So that we don't have the school, so we're not going to have those sacramental trends at our parish, right? Am I correct? They signed up their kids, right? A lot of families have signed up their kids at another school. So the reality is going to be we're not going to have those, right? those preps in our parish or our combined parishes going forward. So while I want to acknowledge that, it's also the reality that we're just not going to have that going forward, right? So, we can definitely say a cause of that is the closure of our school, but unless our schools come back, we need to come up with other solutions. There are definitely other kids who need those sacramental preps that live within our boundaries that aren't going to the neighboring Catholic schools. So how do we reach out to them? How do we bring them back? That's what I would say our proposal has to include. What other questions? Yes, sir.
Clyde Article, Grand Ninth of St. John Bosco Parish. Once a proposal is made to the Archdiocese, what's the timeline we're looking at before they make a decision or give us an option?
The only thing I know is that the Archbishop's going to make some decisions in the fall. That's what he has communicated. So that's the only timeline I have about the decisions and the implementation.
Just to clarify, the Archbishop said at the meeting that some of the decisions may take 3 to 5 years to implement. Okay, so, and I think of the tree in the gospel that wasn't producing any fruit. Okay, and the owner wanted it cut down because it wasn't bearing any fruit. But the gardener says, let me hoe around it and manure it. And if it doesn't bear any fruit in the future, then you can cut it down. So I think the Archbishop is looking for how we are going to pastorally plan to make our parishes more vibrant. The numbers for baptisms, okay, they were down, but now they're coming back up. At St. Rosalie, we had this past 3 Sundays, we had a baptism every Sunday. There are more in the pipeline. We've had 3 weeks, we had 2 baptisms at Bosco, and there are more in the pipeline. So that is reversing the trend, okay? So all things are possible, but it depends upon each and every one of us to do our part. It's important that we all get to church. It's important that we all invite others to come to church. It's important that we seek out candidates to the RCIA program. As Brenner mentioned, we're not accustomed to doing that. Okay, but as Catholic Christians, that's the missionary mandate received on the day of our baptism.
This is just a comment. My concern, as we noted on there, that St. Rosalie's got some maintenance issues. We have had blue roofs on several of our buildings now since Ida. I'm concerned, in fact, we've had our blue roofs replaced at least twice. I'm concerned with hurricane season approaching why the Archdiocese has not allowed us to get a new roof on our different buildings. We're going to compound our maintenance problems when hurricane season rolls around, and that's just that's just unacceptable, and it shouldn't be allowed. It's unjust. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gerard LeBlanc from St. Rosalie Parish, and I just want to know, the students that go to Archbishop Shaw and AOL still have to confirm. Where are all these students going to get their confirmations done now? Because in the last 3 years, we've cut the schools out, but these 2 schools are still alive and living, and most of those students go to St. Rosalie or St. John Bosco. So where are they being confirmed?
No, Hi, Father Steve. We from Shaw High School. We just had 8 at Immaculate Conception confirmed from Shaw. I could speak for that. And visitation, we had another 8 Those were in the last 3 weeks. And Father could tell us, Father does the confirmation class, and he knows the numbers for St. Rosalie's and St. John Bosco right now from those two schools. And it would be between both schools.
St. Rosalie, St. John Bosco combination prep program, we have 27 students in the program right now, combined in St. John Bosco, St. Rosalie. But also, many of those that come through the confirmation program come back to St. Rosalie because they went to grammar school here. Okay, they come back to make confirmation with their friends with grammar school days.
So it's probably half of those 27 would be Shaw and AOL, I would imagine. And you're right, when some of you say that all of them don't make confirmation, it's true. We try even in our religion classes to remind them, and they have to go to their parish to make the confirmation. The school can support that, but the parish, they have to attend the parish program, and we do support that.
I do have a problem with the communion because I personally taught those kids and we made communion 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. So how do you get from 39 and then 21, 0? I taught those children. I know they made communion at St. Rosalie. But it was St. Rosalie kids at St. John Bosco Church. It was St. Rosalie children at St. Bosco Church. It says 0 in both churches. And yeah, in 20 and 21, we did make it at St. John Bosco, but they were St. Rosalie kids, and their certificate said they made their communion at St. Rosalie.
Okay, so let me go back. I'll go back to the, sorry, you can turn that one off.
Thank you.
I will go back and look at just what the information was sent to me. So the parish fills out this information, they send it to the archdiocese sent it to me, but we'll correct that if it's wrong. We'll make sure.
Back here we have one.
It's a two-part question. I had heard that the building for the former School of St. Rosalie was going to be leased. I wanted to check on the status of that project, and would the debt ratio perhaps go to alleviate some of those financial concerns? And secondly, you said the Archbishop is going to make a decision in the fall. Is that correct?
So I'll answer your the first question.
The first is the building, formerly the School for St. Rosalie, was rumored to be leased. Where are we with that, and will that alleviate the debt? Is that lease going to happen?
Let Father answer that one.
It's my dream that the buildings be either leased or sold. Okay, we've had a number of people that have come to look at the building referred by the Archdiocese. Okay, and nobody is interested in the whole campus. Okay, and we sold some property with the help of Chris DeMarco's husband, who's a realtor. We sold 2 pieces of property. Okay, now the rest, the diocese is concerned that we have a much more larger realty firm that has more connections that might be able to sell or lease the majority of the campuses. As we're at right now, it's a slow process working with the diocese, okay, but I do hopefully see light at the end of the tunnel. And then when we're able to lease or sell those buildings, that would wipe out all of St. Rosalie's debt to the Archdiocese, plus leave us with money in reserve for the rainy days when we might have to replace something, a major piece of equipment at St. Rosalie. The blue tarps, they are on their third generation. We hope and we pray, okay, that they can work out with the details with FEMA, okay, to get the money to put the new roofs on. Right now with the tarps, nothing is leaking, so we hope and pray that before these third set of tarps wear out, okay, we do something with the buildings. I ask you all to pray, okay, the sooner we can rent or lease those buildings, okay, the more money left over from the school will be able to help the parishes out. Right now, we still have to pay the electricity, okay, gas and water, the inspections for the fire alarm system, the elevators, okay, and the list goes on. And that little money left over is starting to dwindle.
And then I think the second question was related to the Archbishop making decisions in the fall. Yes, that's what he has said, that he intends to make decisions in the fall.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. My comment would be, if the decision is coming in the fall, why are we looking at a 3 to 5 year timeline? And secondly, to follow that, and then I'll stop, I think we need to, instead of just inviting new people back in, we need to focus on alumni and their contributions for the well-being of both parishes.
Thank you. I think the 2 to 5 year timeline is just saying, any type of proposals that we make need to look past just 1 year. So if we were to make a proposal about parish sustainability and vitality, that we need to say, here's our plan for the next 3 to 5 years. He's going to make a decision in the fall if, okay, go ahead, I bless that, continue, or he'll make his suggestions about any changes to that plan that we propose. Did you have a question?
I have a question. Why, it's an emotional question, why should we believe what you were saying to us right now when we were lied to about what Immaculata and Blank proposed? We were lied to then, and so why should we believe anything that anybody, this is not just smoke screen, and this hasn't been decided already for us without our input, like Immaculata and Blank.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with
I'm sure
what
you're
that took
not,
place, so
but it's an
I apologize.
emotional-
I understand. And I think trust can be difficult to, right, once trust is broken, it can be difficult, and I want to acknowledge that and honor that. This is the information that I have, and that's what I'm sharing with you. Yes, sir.
I'm going to forget about being able to make comments because all questions are very viable, and I respect everybody here that is even attending. And to all of you, I say, God bless you for trying to preserve our parish. I would like to make a point. A point is that Father Mark asked me to go over the registration cards, the registration information. It is not the people here or even the priests, all of the priests, including the parish, is a problem. When I did the registration cards, I did about 400 of them. They hadn't been touched since 1984. Nobody in the 30 or 40 years ever took the time to go and look to see what type of parishioners we had, where they stood. I'm going to tell you that at least 50% of those registration cards had a question: how often do you attend Mass? And at least 50% of 40 years said occasionally. If I'm a pastor, and I'm sure Father Mark's going to do it, if I fill out a registration card and I put occasionally, I'm Father Mark, I'm sitting down and talking to you. So a lot of the problem of attendance is not because of the current administration. This has been an ongoing problem for 40 years.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, and I think that's all part of the proposals, right? Those are ideas that we can do to bring people back and to increase our vibrancy.
Well,
So thank you.
one more
I just want to give, we'll come back. If we have time, I just want to make sure that there's
Okay.
enough. Yes, sir.
Yeah, can everybody? I just have a question about the average age thing. You know, like y'all are using 65, but you know, people are living long and long. You just can't say, oh, well, 65, and that's the end of the parish. You know, most people are living to 70, 80, 90. I'm just saying, like, so 3 to 5 years from 65 is not really, you know, it's not really a good gauge to base on whether or not this parish or these two parishes are going to be vibrant for the next 3 to 5 years. They very well could be vibrant for the next 20 to 30 years, you know?
I hope so. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank
That's
you.
all I wanted to ask.
Thank you.
All right, all the seniors, give them a round of applause.
I'm counting on all of you to live past 65, all right? I didn't want to make that point. We have one in the back.
Hang on 1 second, I'm coming. It's a big room.
Are the sacramental statistics the only way that we're currently able to gauge future like the younger generation of parishioners?
No.
Because you mentioned the registration cards, and when you fill out the registration cards, you put like, I have a child of this age and this age.
Yeah.
But obviously, again, the school is closed, so my daughter is at St. Andrew the Apostle. She will be making her sacraments there. But then I know that that's not going to count as a first communion made in this parish, but is there a way to count like youth who are participating?
Yeah.
Like she's at church every Sunday. When she's of age, she is going to become an altar server.
Yeah.
So are there other gauges for youth in the parish other than the sacramental statistics?
Yeah, so there is a line item that I know the Archdiocese collects, which is youth ministry, right? So I think that's one gauge that we can use. I think the altar servers should be another one. They don't currently collect that, but I think that should be another one. It's obviously an imperfect, right? Because we know people, kids are coming to Mass and they're participating in the life of the parish, even though maybe they're not registered for religious education. But it's one of the only ways that we can try to keep a pulse on, right? Are we having younger parishioners come in? Are they learning their faith? Are they getting their sacraments here? And obviously, on the archdiocesan level, it's getting picked up because your daughter is going to another parish. But we also just have to face the reality, as the first gentleman mentioned, that they're not, and your daughter is creating relationships and bonds at the parish that she's going to. So while it's imperfect, right, I get it. I am definitely open, and I think the Archdiocese would be open to other ways to try to gauge, right, the future of our parish by, whether it's altar servers. Like I said, they collect youth ministry, but if there are other suggestions that you have, we'd be happy to, propose it to them for sure.
There's one right back here.
I just want to make a little comment that we who are over 65 need a place to worship too. And we helped build these two parishes, and we're facing this. And I understand all the statistics, and it has to go by something. But should there be consideration that the older parishioners need places to worship? And that's one comment. The other is, it sounds like we have a timeline that's going to take place. And it shouldn't be a competition between St. Rosalie and St. John Bosco. And it doesn't sound that way. It sounds like we need to get together to see how we can survive together. And I don't know, the committee that we have, how can we give them our input?
Excellent.
Can you hear me? Good. So I'm Neil from St. John Bosco, so I'll say that at the end of this meeting, all the vibrancy committee members will be out there and we'll be taking your suggestions. But I think one of the first things you said stuck with me, that we are moving into an I can't pronounce that right, apostolic age. And I was raised Protestant, and maybe it's kind of more in my upbringing and DNA, like going out and getting people. But I think the next month or so, the next 2 months, we're just 8 people on that committee. You guys are 500 minds here. You guys know this area. You know the people here, even if they're not in this room. We need your ideas. I have some. Other people on the vibrancy committee, we have some ideas, but we need your ideas. And you don't need ideas today necessarily, because that's the process, right? So you could talk to us. The 8 of us will be out there. But anything you come up with, you have a dream and pop out of bed and say, I know how to save the parish. Awesome, let's do it. But genuinely, we need your ideas. And it's going to be a process, I'm sure. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you, Neil. Yeah, so that's the best way, right? So reach out to those members, reach out to Father with your suggestions, and then that will, that's the best way to make sure that we're included inside the plan. Is there one in the back?
Back here we have one.
I just shouted out that we're asking you to fill out these surveys to give us ideas of ministries we're missing, what you might want to offer, or on the front, what we can do for you. Maybe your neighbor needs communion brought to them. That's what these surveys will help the 8 of us to do, to determine how we can serve you better. And perhaps you could find a few moments to be a Eucharistic minister, an adorer, sing in the choir. Where are our children, our grandchildren and great-grandchildren? If you could just please try to think of one little thing you could do if you don't do anything. Some people here do so many things that they're serving the church every day in some kind of capacity. But we need everyone. And the children that are here, you're our future. We want a good church for you. So parents, if you can encourage altar servers, encourage any kind of ministry on this beautiful brochure. And there might be missing ministries we don't even know about. I do want to put in a plug. We don't know who the leaders are of all these ministries at the 2 parishes. And I have some papers over here. If you're the leader of the Ladies' Altar Society, or if you're the leader of the Women's Club and willing for us to publish in the church paper your contact information, or maybe not you, maybe a different officer of the club, please fill out that form. We don't have information from the office. We need you to let us know who you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another one back.
Hi, my name's Lauren. I just have a comment. I am a parishioner of St. Rosalie, and I think I get really frustrated when we talk about the church and how there's not a lot of young people that attend Mass these days, or are parishioners, or who have kids that go to Catholic schools. And my question is don't you think that this is going to be a problem within the entire Archdiocese, especially on the West Bank? People aren't sending their kids to Catholic school anymore. They're going to magnet schools, public schools, or places that are cheaper. And so we're losing the foundation within the families. And I think that's the problem. It's the problem not here at St. Rosalie or at St. John Bosco. It's a problem of the Catholic Church, especially in this archdiocese. I go to Mass across the lake, or I go to Mass in another city, and I'm surrounded by kids everywhere. And I'm not embarrassed if my 2-year-old is crying because there's 100 other kids. So that's the problem. We're not inviting our family to come with us to Mass, or we're not instilling that into the people around us. So this is going to be a problem throughout our entire city if other people don't go ahead and stand up for their faith or actually practice as a Catholic. So I'm not sure how good your statistics are throughout the Archdiocese, because how many of those people are actually going to Mass every Saturday, and it's not just on Christmas Eve and Easter Sunday? I think that's where the stats are kind of skewed. I mean, honestly, look around when you go to church and at other parishes, and you can make that same exact suggestion. So that's just a comment for me. I feel like a lot of people also feel the same way, but when you guys are really deliberating what's going to close or stay open, make sure that your stats are really correct, because unfortunately I think that the younger age is just dying in our faith, unfortunately.
Thank you.
If the buildings belong to the Archdiocese, why is the church responsible for the upkeep of it and not the Archdiocese?
That's a great question, and I can raise that with them. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with the legal structures of how it works, but we can raise it. We can raise it with them. So your point is, if they're the owner, legal owner, then they should be the legal caretaker of the buildings. It would take a huge burden off of.
Back here. Thank you.
Yeah, O.J. Ogeron from St. Rosalie. You have 15 parishes on your list. Are they taking consideration when you start closing the other churches, the people from those churches have to find another church, which may be St. Rosalie or St. John Bosco. So if you close all 15, then none of them have any place to go. So you're going to have people, a lot of them quitting the Catholic. They're not going to be Catholic anymore. They're going to leave, frustrated. Just like if St. Rosalie is closed. I've been going to St. Rosalie for 67 years. I'm not going to another church. So, that's what's going to happen. The Archdiocese is going to close themselves out. So they better consider what they're doing.
Thank you, and thank you. Thankfully, I don't have to make that decision, but I can bring that concern to the Archdiocese and make sure they're aware of it when they are making these decisions.
Thank you for letting me talk. I'm not trying to put the blame on anybody. I had 3 boys that graduated from this school. Of course, it's been a while back. All of them are very, very successful. They go to church regularly, maybe more than me. And I really, honestly think the whole situation comes from the family.
Thank you.
I'm coming over this way. Could you raise your hand? Here you go, honey.
Hello, my name is Rose Champagne. I go to St. Rosalie, where I'm very proud to go. If it is my understanding, and if I am correct in understanding this, to me, if the Archdiocese closed the St. Rosalie School, I think they should be responsible for all the bills and not St. Rosalie. This is my opinion and comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say, kind of reiterate what some people are saying, because I think before we're going to be able to move forward, we might have to take a couple of steps back before we can move forward. Just to reiterate what a lot of people are saying. Look, we've been supporting this church, this parish, all our lives. My grandfather, my father, they built the parish. A bunch of old Italians came from Sicily. They started it. So before we move forward, we have to make sure that everybody's held accountable on both sides, because we all put a lot of money into the parish to keep it going. We had 3 kids go to school, so did many other families. So somewhere along the line, there was a lot of mismanagement with this money. For us to be so far in debt now, considering we all paid out of our pockets to start a new parish. So the Archdiocese, moving forward, I know we got to come together, find a way to move forward. But people need to be held accountable. Not just everybody put more in, do more, do that. We want to do more. I preach to my kids every day. Let's bring some more people into the parish. Let's grow it. Not for the love of just the religion, because that's what God taught us. That's what Jesus taught us. But accountability has to be put on both sides to move forward.
Thank you.
Is it on? I just have a small comment. I think that we're looking at this thing from a spiritual vantage point and also from a business point. Let's face it, the Archdiocese is a business. Let's look at it from both vantage points. If we lose one soul because the church closes, how much is that worth? If they close the church, then there's no income whatsoever. The bills continue. Think about that.
Thank you.
Let's get a mic on her.
Hi. How come the Archdiocese doesn't have a representative here to see and hear everything we're saying? How come that's not happening? We need somebody, I understand your position, but we need somebody from the Archdiocese to come here and answer some of the questions that all these people have.
Yeah.
I can't understand why, okay, I'll use Laurent, for instance, at St. John Bosco, why that school is succeeding so well when we pay high tuition and we can't even keep our kids in our community. That's the problem. The problem is the Archdiocese is taking the money, but yet they're not helping us.
Yes, ma'am.
Why don't the Archdiocese show us what they're cutting in their budget before they shoot down our church and our schools?
Yeah, I think
Tell them to
we
cut
can.
their budget and prove some of the money that they are wasting, and then come back and tell us, we got to close your church or we got to close your school.
Right. I think that's a reasonable request, and I know that the Archdiocese has had their cuts, right, their budget cuts. I don't know the specifics of that, but I think that's, I want to honor that, and we can bring that to them to ask, for sure. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Charlene Bourgeois, and the women, St. John Bosco. Now, the Women's Society knows I don't usually talk, so this is important. I think the Archdiocese years ago messed up. This whole Southeast Louisiana has too many churches and too many schools. I'm sorry, I'm shaking. Our daughter lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, and they drive 50 minutes one way and 50 minutes another way to get home. And they go to, St. Francis at Leeville. And their mass is close to 2 hours. 2 hours. Right, James? 2 hours. And they have this huge church packed. And there's all kind of ministries. They give to the poor all over the place. And their CCD has tremendous attendance. We have too many churches. I mean, not that I want St. John Bosco to close.
Thank you.
And over here, I just have this young lady.
My question is, and why doesn't the Archdiocese see, what about the successful parishes on the West Bank? What is the difference? Or what are they doing different than these parishes? I mean, there has to be something that, say, St. Andrew is very successful, or Immaculate Conception is doing well. So has the Archbishop looked at what is the difference? What is going on at each place that one would be successful on the West Bank and another won't?
I think that's definitely something.
The schools?
Yeah, it's definitely something we can ask them, but it's also an opportunity for all of us to also take the initiative and maybe go and see what are they doing. You know, I'm not familiar with those parishes, but it could be an opportunity for, to reach out and to see what it is. And maybe it's a school, maybe it's demographics, right? You don't know. But I think that's a valid point and something that we should do and include in our plan, right? I think that is something that would make sense. One in the back.
Okay, last one from me. I know that we're supposed to bring people in. You know, we got a nice turnout today. Is this not enough to support the parishes? I mean, look at the amount of people that's in here. I mean, we all need a church, right? I'm just asking, is this enough? Or like on average, how many people, how many members does each church need, to stay vibrant? Like, what do we need to do, That's all I want.
I think that's a good question. From what I have seen from the Archdiocese, it's just about arresting kind of the downward trend, right? So I don't even think it's necessarily a number. It's just, can we stop kind of the bleed down, right, when it comes to mass attendance and the sacramental trends and financially as well. So, but good question. Let him bring the mic.
I don't need that. I can yell loud enough. My comment is this. Even the Vibrancy Committee, the one time that I was invited as a courtesy, I listened to all of their suggestions and all, and I give them all the praise in the world for all that they've done, because I think they've done a great job. But my comment is this. You talked about RCIA in your original presentation, and I agree. RCIA is a necessity, but that's a big but. The but is what all of these people have related to. What is going to happen to St. Rosalie and St. John Bosco in the future? We can't start a 21st evangelization if we aren't going to be here. I think we need to fix all of the issues that were brought up by all of these people now. And if the end result is the Archbishop says, okay, here's what we're going to do, and we're all still here, and even some of the Vibrancy Committee agreed with this, then we need to start we need to become 21st century evangelists. This is not back in the time of Peter, Paul, and all of them. This is the 21st century. We need to find a way to get out to Christians of all other faiths and say, why I am Catholic and you should be too.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
I think the problem is solved slowly and over time. Am I good? Am I good? Okay, thank you. I think if we show the diocese that we have stopped the drop, which we already have, by the way, right? So he showed the numbers, and the numbers of 2023 are better slightly than 2022. They're already upward. But what he's saying is that for all parishes, the numbers are slightly upward. And what the projections anticipate is that it's going to go right back down again. And that's going to be the next year and the next 2 years and 3 years and 5 years. And I think what matters is if for St. Rosalie and St. John Bosco, we get people back in the pews and they keep coming. And there's someone I listen to on YouTube, and he says, a very wise man, but he says, you know, the line to be loved, it stretches out the door and around the block. But the line to love, meaning what you can give for your country or your parish, step right up. That door is wide open. There's no wait. So if every single one of us did one thing over the next 6 months that we're not doing now for our parish, and then we did it for the year, and I know that's hard. I know that's hard because I do. Okay? But that's gonna solve this problem. It's gonna solve this problem because we'll stay open. And it's not going to be magical overnight, but we'll stay open, and more people will come, and more people will come. And faith is built in tiny bits and pieces, and it's built over a journey and a process. So. Mm-hmm.
But we all know, if we're going to be honest, that vibrancy versus revenue. And else we can bring revenue up, which means bring parishioners back in, then... And I already told you when I did the cards what I saw in those cards. How are you going to bring people back who originally said occasionally?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Jason Brown, new member of St. John Bosco, okay? Baptized at Christ the King, confirmation at Christ the King, confirmation at St. Cletus, communion at Christ the King. All of my children were baptized and did all of their sacraments at visitation. But my point is, a lot of us on the West Bank were church jumpers because that was a convenience. But the biggest issue in this room, in the entire, my generation of Catholics, we attend every week, which is rare for other Sissy and some other people about our age. It's about we don't trust the archdiocese. And someone has got to get the archbishop in front of all of us to speak with us. We have been fed lies over and over and over. This lady brought it up in the front, and it was never addressed. You're not aware of the situation between Immaculata and blank, but it happened. And then here you go, it's about to happen again because the school that they sold it to is about to leave that building and close, and they're going to give that building right back to the archdiocese. All of the buildings over here that are closed, that's all archdiocesan property that they've leased right back again. It's the constant breaking of faith with the community that my generation's not putting up with it. They don't go to church anymore because of that. I go in spite of it, but it's very difficult for me to bring people to Mass. And if the Salesians weren't here on the West Bank, there'd be nothing left because there's no archdiocesan priests left. It is just, we are at the end of our road. And that man said it back there. He's not going to another church. It's not going to happen. What you have done is pushed our kids away from their faith. I didn't go to St. Rosalie, but I know a lot of people whose kids did. You closed their school without any comment from the parish. It's just a never-ending string of lies. Never-ending. And how can you ask these communities to keep giving and giving and giving without a representative from the archdiocese to speak to you about it? This is the archbishop's problem. And he may have not have created the issues, but he's a part of it. And the bankruptcy's a part of it. It's absolutely right. It's about money. It's about money, and it has to be found to pay for the mistakes of the past. And we're all stuck paying for those costs. It's ludicrous to me that that I go to his 8 o'clock mass because the youth mass is why we go there now. My son sings at the 8 o'clock mass. But you're asking this community to pay for school buildings that you closed the school that they didn't want to close. It's insane. But the Archbishop continues to make these decisions. And until he comes in front of these communities, how can he expect people to return? None of us, I didn't want to stop going to Mass because of COVID. Y'all put it on TV. You know, those were decisions the Archdiocese made. And I don't believe your numbers are correct. I believe back there, she was 100% right. You can't have 0 when you had the baptisms here. And I don't know if that was a clerical error or if that's just a thing that happens. Father Steve's about to shut me off, but
I'm the only one who can do that.
yeah. But no, I think that the heart of it is it's a trust issue.
Yeah.
But we do have a vibrant community. I mean, his adoration had 20-something recent graduates at adoration. So to say that there's not good, strong, young Catholic faith, that's not quite true. But why do you, if somebody slaps your hand or kicks you under the table, why are you going to keep going back to that person? And that's just it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
I am happy that Jason, about the First Communions was a clerical error. I take responsibility for that. There were First Communions at St. Rosalie this year, and I don't know, just couldn't get it down. I know, my friend Gabriel from St. John Bosco received his communion at St. John Bosco, and I put down 1 there, but I don't know how I missed, St. Rosalie. Then even in going over the stats for this, I've been up to my ears with everything else, so that was overlooked. We're talking about things of the past. We want to look to the future. We can't change the past. The Archbishop is changing. Believe it or not, the Archdiocese is in bankruptcy. It's in bankruptcy. They've cut staff at the diocesan offices. You try to call the diocesan office, you get an answering machine. We'll get back to you when we can. This time, the Archbishop is listening. The Archdiocese is spending beaucoup dinaros to have these professionals to come to help us to move forward. And the goal is to make our parishes more vibrant, to increase the number of those attending Mass every week, to invite others to come, to reach out. We have a treasure in our faith. We have to be able to invite others to experience the treasure that we have in our faith. We have to make choices. We have to let our children realize important choices. I teach confirmation for both parishes. 2-3 weeks ago, I was very happy, always telling the confirmandi how important it is to get to Mass. She came to Mass and she brought her little brother. At confirmation class, I said, it was so good to see you. What Mass did you go to yesterday? It was a Monday class. What Mass did you go to? Oh no, there was a parade and we couldn't go. Okay, now, that's a choice she made. Why do you think she made that choice? Because her family was going to the parade. Oh no, she drives. She drives. Okay, so somebody mentioned about the family. Yes, faith begins in the family, and kids absorb what their families do. If the family is going to church on Sundays, that becomes the normal thing for the children to do. Family is most important. I thank all of you for being here today. Your presence shows the official representative of the Archdiocese about the care and concern that we have for our parishes. That is so important. But once again, as I said in the beginning, okay, the diocese trusts in God, but for pre-registration, they want to see signatures. So if you've pre-registered before you leave, please, okay, they're in alphabetical order, okay, sign in where your name is so that we know that you are here. We can report back to Brenner that you were here. We have many more people that were pre-registered, which is a great sign of our love, okay, for our parishes. Those of you who did not register or you can't find your name on the pre-registration sheets, there were some glitches, okay, in the system. There's other sheets where you can sign your name and give your information so you can be continuing in part of the ongoing process as we go to discern how to move forward to make more vibrant parishes. I'm so happy that you are here today. And there's surveys. This is part of a pastoral planning process, not only for the Archdiocese, but for our parishes. And it's important, and it's not just enough to come up with ideas of what we could do, but we need people committed to work through those ideas. It's amazing how many people come up with so many suggestions. Father, you do it. I can't. Okay? Many wonderful suggestions come. I try to get people to help out. Oh, I'm too busy. I'm too old. I'm too young. Okay? We can't give those excuses anymore. We can't say, I'm too embarrassed to ask somebody to come to church with me. Okay? I do it all the time when I meet kids. Have you been to church this Sunday? Why not? Okay? Well, you drive. It's a choice that you made. Okay. Father Steve, the director, is giving me the sign to move on. He knows about my Bahamian homilies. I do want to thank Father Steve for setting up the hall so beautifully.
Thank you, Father Mark. This woman here was just waiting and, saying something about Father George, I think.
Hello, my name is Lana Martin. I'm sorry, sir, I have different opinion about you don't have faith to church, or I'm sorry for my English, excuse me, please. I would like to tell my experience. Here, 8 years ago from Ukraine, my daughter was 14 years. We had big problem with adaptation. My husband wanted to divorce, and we had very, very bad time. Father George helped us. I spent here hours and hours with Father George, excuse me. And this is, I want to tell you, sir, if you want how to found, you will find way how to be with church. You will find way how to be part of church, and you will have your faith. But if you don't, you don't. So I try to tell my experience. Father George helped us so much. And we come back together with my husband, reconciliation. Now together with my husband. And I try to explain that this, excuse me for my English, it is big connection because church can help in everything, with children, with family, with husband, wife. And just go, just believe, just have faith, and everything will be fine. And my idea that it will be good if church will have more event, will have more different subjects. For example, to meet like a cooking together. I will teach how to cook in Ukrainian borscht. Or for example, to have meeting for people who has family problems, family counselor or something like that, or craft, to do together something. Just, I think, more ideas, more interesting subjects, and people come in. People will be together, like big family. My daughter, for example, from 14, she was in choir 3 years in John Bosco before coronavirus. And she was happy. She took a lot of interesting things from her older friends from choir. It was very interesting time, 3 years in choir. So I think, my opinion, you will find way if you want. Be together with church, have connection, found friends, and you will have happiness. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
While she was speaking, I snuck over here and I looked at Brenner's notes. He took down what you were saying, and he's a good speaker and he can convey, okay, what we're saying to the Archdiocese. And I want to thank him. Okay, he is a tremendous facilitator. Let's a round of applause for Brenner. Now, all of you, I am giving you a degree. It's going to be the MD degree, and it does not stand for medical doctor. Okay, it stands for missionary disciple. If we want to grow the church, we have to go out, just like the apostles did, and proclaim the good news of Jesus and all that Jesus did for them. And we have to proclaim to those around us what Jesus has done for us. So you have that degree, MD. You can write that after your names, MD, because we're giving it to you now. Okay, and now I ask Father Steve and the other priests, okay, to extend their right hand. Oh, Hannah, you've been waiting patiently.
For in the back. Just data. What are the successful parishes, the difference between us? Yeah. So I think with the closing of the school, not only do you lose like the revenue from tuition or just the consistent being able to, obviously there's a lot of debt coming from those school buildings, but I know that like when I went to St. Rosalie, it was a lot easier to then have kids be like, become altar servers, or I know that with my daughter, I see it in the tuition bill, is that her tuition would be lower if I paid the parishioner support fee. So you lose out on that influx of money as well as what Father John does over there is that the kids actually have to scan or sign in to be at church. And so that forces the kids, and you have to go to like 80% of Mass throughout the year for that lower tuition cost. So all these people who are may not actually be part of that parish attend to, so all of that is one aspect that you lose out without a school attached. But also, I know that in the heyday of St. Rosalie and St. John Bosco, the school fair was a very big moneymaker as well for the year. And I think we lost out on that, not only with COVID, but with the closure of the school. And so I don't know if it's feasibility, just a suggestion as a data kind of person, to compare apples to apples. Shouldn't we be comparing schools that have, or churches, parishes that have schools attached to them, have their own kind of comparison pool versus standalone churches that don't have schools attached?
Okay, thank you to all those who are participated today. Thank you to all who've come out. You have the degree of missionary disciples, and I ask all of the priests present to extend their hands towards the congregation for our final blessing. O loving and gracious God, we give you praise and thanks for your goodness and your love. We give you praise and thanks for the love, the care and concern of all those gathered here today to help our parishes become the vibrant churches that God wants them to be. We ask your blessing upon them as they go forth as missionary disciples. And we ask this blessing as always in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. If you have not registered or signed pre-registration, please do so. If you've walked in, please sign the wake-in registration forms and the parish surveys, which is part of our pastoral planning. Thanks again for everyone who's come.